200 quid of the expensive petrol, 6 tanks of it, and the car ended up worse than when he started. I'm Danny. I'm 30, I work in my dad's garage in southeast London, and I'm the one who plugged into that car in February. I'll tell you what was actually wrong with it later, because the answer costs about £90 and it explains this entire video. 6 petrol station brands, counting down. And number 6 isn't really a brand at all. It's the one most of you have been worrying about for no reason. Number 6, the small independent forecourt. The unbranded one, the Jet. The one attached to a village shop with 2 pumps and no super unleaded at all. I'm starting here because this is the one people are most nervous about, and in my view, they're worrying about the wrong thing entirely. The nervousness usually goes, cheap fuel from a place I've never heard of must be thinner or watered down or somehow lower grade than the stuff from a big canopy with a light show on it. It isn't. Petrol sold in this country has to meet the applicable standard, whoever's name is on the sign, and a great deal of it comes out of the same storage terminals and arrives on the same tankers, regardless of which logo ends up above the pump. The difference between one brand's ordinary 95 and another's is the additive package that gets put in on the way, not some fundamentally different liquid. So no, I've never once had an engine apart or a fuel system in bits and concluded that unbranded petrol was what did it. And at the end of this, I'll tell you why I can say that with a lot more confidence than a 30-year-old has any right to. It's the most useful thing in the video and I've kept it till last on purpose. But there is something worth paying attention to at a small forecourt, and it's got nothing to do with the brand. It's turnover. Fuel sits in tanks under the ground. Those tanks breathe, and over time, a small amount of water can find its way in. Condensation, a bad seal on a filler cap, rain around a poorly maintained cover. On a busy site turning over tankers of fuel every few days, that's a non-issue, because it's constantly being pumped out and refilled. On a very quiet site where the same fuel has been sitting for weeks, it's more of a possibility. And I have seen the results of that. Not often, but I've seen it. A car that comes in running badly, sometimes with the fuel filter blocked or the pump struggling, and when you drain some fuel off, you get a layer in the bottom of the jar that shouldn't be there. It's almost never a brand problem. It's a quiet pumps problem. So here's what I'd actually tell you, and it's more useful than the brand argument. If you're somewhere remote and the forecourt looks like nothing's moved through it in a fortnight and you've got a choice, use the busier one. And a general habit worth having anywhere, if a tanker is on site delivering while you're filling up, come back later. Filling straight after a delivery is when anything sitting in the bottom of that tank has just been stirred up. One more thing on these sites, and it's the reason a lot of people end up at them without meaning to. Most won't have a super unleaded pump at all. If your car genuinely requires the high grade, and I'll get to who that is at number 1, then that's not a place you can fill up as a matter of routine. Occasionally, on a long trip, fine, it won't hurt you. As a weekly habit on a car that needs 98, it's not ideal. Verdict, not the problem people think it is. Judge a forecourt on how busy it is, not on whose name is on the roof. Now before number 5, 30 seconds on why I'm the one telling you this, and then the thing that decides the whole subject. I grew up in that workshop. At 22, I went to work for a main dealer. 6 years, mostly diagnostics. I came back at 28, and in our place, I'm the one who plugs into a car when it isn't running right. So when somebody's convinced their fuel is the problem, I'm the person who finds out whether it was. Nobody pays me. No fuel company has ever given me anything, which given what I'm about to say is probably just as well. And here's the one thing that decides this entire subject. Get hold of it, and you can work out the answer for your own car without me. Petrol does not go everywhere in your engine. That sounds obvious. It isn't, because the way fuel is advertised in this country, you'd think you were pouring a cleaning product through the whole thing on an older style engine. Port injection, which is what most cars had until roughly the last 15 years, the injector sprays fuel into the inlet port just before the valve. So the fuel and everything in it washes over the back of that inlet valve on its way in. Every single time the engine turns. A detergent in the petrol is in contact with that valve constantly. On a modern direct injection engine, the injector is in the combustion chamber itself. The fuel goes straight in. It never touches the back of the inlet valve at all. Which means, and this is the bit nobody says out loud on a forecourt, on a direct injection engine, no petrol on earth can clean the back of your inlet valves. Not the cheap stuff, not the expensive stuff, not 6 tanks of it. The fuel doesn't go there. It's physically impossible. And carbon on the back of the inlet valves is the exact thing most people are buying premium fuel to deal with. So the question isn't which brand is best, it's which parts of my engine does petrol actually reach? And is there anything worth paying extra to protect there? Hold on to that. It decides all 6 of these. If it's useful, subscribe. That's all I'll ask. Number 5 is where the confusion starts, and it's a single word. Number 5, Texaco. I'm starting here because Texaco teaches you the single most useful thing on any forecourt in Britain, and it's got nothing to do with how good their fuel is. It's the word premium. At a Texaco station, the ordinary petrol is called Premium Unleaded 95. And a fair number of people see that word and think they're already buying the good stuff, or conversely go looking for something better because premium sounds like it should cost more than it does. Premium Unleaded is just the normal 95-octane petrol. It's what nearly every car in this country runs on. The word is a hangover from when we had 4-star and unleaded, and it means nothing about quality at all. The high-octane stuff is called Super Unleaded, and at Texaco that's Supreme. I mention it because I had this exact conversation at the dealer service desk more times than I can count. Somebody's convinced they've been running premium fuel for years and they haven't been anywhere near it. It's not their fault. It's a word that means something different on a forecourt than it does anywhere else in the English language. So, on the fuel itself. Texaco say their ordinary 95 has a detergent additive to help keep the injectors clean, and that their Supreme has a stronger package aimed at keeping the engine clean and preventing deposit buildup. And look at the word that's doing the work in every one of those sentences. Help. Not fix, not clean out. Help. That's actually fair, and it's the honest version of what fuel additives do. Keeping injectors clean is real and it's worth something because a dirty injector doesn't spray properly and an engine that isn't fueled properly runs badly, but it's prevention on a healthy system. It's not going to read a fault code and change a coil pack for you. Verdict, the most useful lesson in this video and the least dramatic upgrade. If you're at a Texaco and the price gap to Supreme is small and your handbook is happy either way, fine. But if you're buying it hoping to cure something, you're the bloke from the start of this video. Number 4 is the one I'd call the most wasted money on any forecourt, and it's not because the fuel is bad. Number 4, BP Ultimate. Right, let me be clear before anyone gets upset. BP Ultimate is good petrol. They say it's designed to remove dirt and protect against it building back up, and that it's their best fuel for cleaning and maintaining a petrol engine. I've got no argument with any of that. My problem isn't the fuel, it's how people use it, because this is the black nozzle of the occasional treat. This is the one people put in before a long trip, or when the engine sounded a bit rough for a week, or once a month, as a sort of penance for using the cheap stuff the rest of the time. And that is the single most pointless way to spend money on petrol in Britain. Think about what a detergent package is meant to do. It's meant to keep deposits from forming gradually over a long period in the parts of the fuel system the fuel reaches. It's a maintenance thing. It works, if it works at all, over months. Now put 1 tank of it in a car that's had 11 tanks of something else. That tank is going to be gone in a fortnight, and the deposits it's supposedly working on took 2 years to form. You've spent an extra 6 or 7 quid on essentially nothing. So the honest position on this stuff is always or never. If you've decided the stronger detergent package is worth having on your car, use it every fill and let it do a slow job properly. If you haven't, use the ordinary stuff and put the difference towards a service. The 1 tank before a long journey habit is buying a feeling, not a result. And now I'll finish the story I opened with, because this is where it belongs. That bloke had a slightly rough idle and a hesitation pulling away. Somebody told him it was carbon and that the cure was a few tanks of the expensive stuff. So he did it. 6 tanks, black nozzle every time, the whole autumn. It got very slightly better and then it got worse, and by the time it reached us, it had a proper misfire. I plugged into it. 2 hours later, it was a set of tired plugs and 1 coil on its way out. 90 odd quid in parts, and it ran like a new car. Here's the bit I want you to sit with. The fuel hadn't done anything wrong, it did exactly what the pump promised. He just asked it to do a job it physically cannot do, on an engine where the fuel never even reaches the place he thought it was cleaning. £200 bought him a delay. That's all it ever bought. So the rule is, the moment your car has an actual symptom, a hesitation, a misfire, a warning light, a smell of fuel, using oil, poor starting, stop experimenting at the pump. Every pound spent on petrol at that point is a pound not spent on finding out what's wrong. Verdict, fine fuel commonly wasted. Commit to it or don't bother. Number 3 is the one where I think most British drivers are simply wrong and it costs them money. Number 3, Tesco Momentum 99. There's a snobbery about supermarket petrol in this country that I've never understood and I don't think stands up. The belief goes, proper fuel comes from an oil company. Supermarket fuel is thin stuff for people who care about club card points, and if you want performance petrol, you have to go to a branded forecourt. Tesco Momentum is 99 octane. That's not a slightly better version of ordinary petrol, that's genuinely high octane. As high as anything else you'll find on a normal forecourt in Britain. And Tesco say it's got an additive blend intended to keep the fuel system clean and working properly. So for the driver who actually needs high octane, and I'll come to who that is at number 1, this is a legitimate option, often at a lower price than the equivalent from an oil company, and frequently on a route you're already driving. Now, some caveats, because I'm not being paid by them either. It's not at every Tesco. The bigger sites, generally. So don't build a fuel routine around it without checking your local one actually has it, because a routine you can't stick to is worse than no routine. And here's the trap that catches people with this one specifically, and it comes straight back to my thread. 99 on the pump does not mean it cleans more. Octane and detergent are two completely separate jobs. Octane is about how well the fuel resists igniting before it's supposed to. That's it. That's all it is. Detergent is about deposits. A 99 octane fuel isn't automatically a better cleaner than a 95, and buying high octane to deal with carbon is buying the wrong thing entirely. Verdict: genuinely good option, unfairly dismissed. If your car needs the high grade, check what your local Tesco charges before you assume the branded forecourt is the serious choice. Number 2 is the one that will actually save an engine, just not the engine you're thinking of. Number 2, Esso Synergy Supreme Plus. Everything so far has been about octane and detergents. This one's here for a completely different letter on the pump, and it's the one almost nobody reads: E5 and E10. That's the ethanol. E10 means up to 10%, and it's the standard 95 octane petrol at practically every forecourt in the country now. E5 means up to 5%, and it's generally what you'll find on the super unleaded pump, where a station sells 2 grades. Esso are clear about theirs. Supreme Plus 99 is a 99 octane E5 petrol, and they say the premium grade gets a higher additive treatment rate than the regular one. So why does that matter to a mechanic? 2 reasons, and the second one is the one that cost people real money. The first is compatibility. Some older cars, classics, imports and certain motorbikes aren't happy with 10% ethanol because of what it can do to older rubber, seals and certain fuel system components over time. If that's your car, this isn't a performance decision, it's a maintenance one, and there's an official compatibility checker for it. Use that rather than a forum. The second reason is the one I actually see, and it's the other car from that February, the one I haven't told you about yet. A little convertible that comes out about 6 times a year and sits under a cover the rest of the time. My dad's mates, as it happens, which is why it ended up with us. And that one had a genuine, expensive, fuel-related problem, the opposite of the first bloke. He spent money on fuel that couldn't help him. This owner had never once thought about fuel, and it was quietly costing him. Ethanol attracts water, it absorbs moisture out of the air, and in a car that gets driven regularly that's a non-issue because the fuel's turning over constantly and it never gets the chance to matter. But in a car that sits, the weekend car, the classic, the caravan tow car that does 4 trips a year, the second car that's been on the drive since the owner retired, you've got a tank of fuel slowly pulling moisture in and sitting there with it, month after month. What that does to a fuel system over a few years is not theoretical. I've had corroded fuel lines, gummed up carburetors on the older stuff, and injection systems that needed cleaning out on cars that had barely covered any miles at all. So if you own something that stands for long periods, the lower ethanol fuel is a genuine, practical, engine-saving choice, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with performance. Alongside keeping the tank reasonably full over winter to reduce the airspace, it's one of the few things in this entire video I'd call proper prevention. Verdict: the one on this list that genuinely saves engines. Just not the fast ones. The ones that don't go anywhere. Quick thing before number 1 and it costs you nothing. If this is useful, tap like. It puts it in front of somebody who's about to spend 200 quid at a petrol station trying to fix a coil pack. Cheers! Number 1, Shell V-Power. This is the one everyone means when they say they only use the good stuff. Most widely available, most heavily advertised, and the one I get asked about more than the other 4 put together. Shells say V-Power contains 3 times more cleaning and protection molecules than their regular fuel, and that it's designed to remove deposits that rob performance and protect against them building up on things like intake valves and injectors. And then underneath, in the small print, they say something I think is the single most honest sentence in the whole premium fuel business. That actual effects and benefits may vary depending on the vehicle type, age, condition, and driving style, and that no guarantees are given. I mean that as a compliment, because that sentence is true and it's the whole thing, but it's not why it's number 1. It's number 1 because of the one group of drivers for whom this stops being a nice to have and becomes straightforward maths. If your handbook says your engine requires 97 or 98 octane, you are not buying a luxury when you use the high grade. You're buying the correct consumable for your car in exactly the same way engine oil is. And here's the part people don't know, which is why they think they're being clever by putting the cheap stuff in a car that asks for the expensive stuff. Modern engines protect themselves, there's a sensor listening for knock, and if the fuel isn't up to what the engine wants, the management system pulls the ignition timing back to stop it damaging itself. You won't hear it, there's no warning light, the car just quietly makes less power and works less efficiently. So on a turbocharged engine that specifies the high grade, running 95 doesn't usually break anything. It makes the car slower and thirstier permanently in a way you can't feel because it's been like that since you bought it. And this is one of the few places where being the diagnostics bloke is actually useful to you, because you can see it. Plug into a car that's been run on the wrong grade for a while and the long-term timing correction is sitting there in the live data. It isn't a fault, so it won't put a light on and nobody will ever mention it. The car has just quietly agreed to be a bit worse for the rest of its life, which means the sum isn't petrol at a higher price per litre, it's petrol at a higher price per litre against fewer miles per gallon. And on a car that genuinely wants the high grade, that gap closes a very long way, sometimes all the way. I've had people work out they were spending more per mile on the cheap fuel. So who should be using this? If your handbook requires the high grade, use it, and stop thinking of it as an indulgence. If you've got a turbo performance car you intend to keep, pick a grade and stay on it. If your car needs E5, that letter matters more than the octane number. And if you drive an ordinary hatchback that's perfectly happy on 95, it's a reasonable choice if the price gap is small and it gives you confidence. As long as you understand the word may. Who shouldn't? Anyone whose engine is burning oil, has a warning light, is misfiring, is rattling on a cold start, or has any fault at all. For you it isn't protection, it's postponement, and it's the most expensive way to postpone anything I know. Verdict for the driver whose handbook asks for it: this is the one entry on the list that can genuinely cost you less rather than more. For everybody else, it's optional. Right, let me tell you the thing I actually know about fuel, because it's not what you'd expect from a bloke who's just spent 20 minutes on it. And this is the bit I said I'd come back to. I'm 30. I haven't seen enough engines die to give you a lifetime's opinion, and I'm not going to pretend I have. But here's what I did have at the main dealer, and it's better than an opinion. When an engine fails under warranty, somebody has to establish why, properly, in writing. Because a manufacturer is being asked to pay for it, and they don't pay unless there's a cause on the form. So the paperwork gets done in a way it never gets done anywhere else in this trade. I read a lot of those, and I'll tell you what was on them. Wrong oil, or the right oil left in far too long. Service intervals stretched because the car seemed fine. Cooling systems ignored until a head gasket went. Timing belts due at 4 years that did 7. Warning lights that came on and went off and nobody mentioned it. Short journeys for years on an engine that never properly warmed up. I never saw one that said the fuel brand. Not one. And believe me, if there had been a way to point at the customer's choice of petrol, somebody would have. And I've thought a lot about why the fuel argument is so much louder than any of those, because it genuinely is. I get asked about fuel brands 10 times more often than I get asked about oil specification. And oil specification is 100 times more important. I think it's because fuel is a decision you make every week, standing there with 2 nozzles in front of you. It feels like control. It feels like something you're doing for your car. Whereas the decisions that actually kill engines are ones you make once a year or once every 4 years. And the punishment for getting them wrong doesn't arrive for a very long time. Nothing happens the day you skip a service. Nothing happens the day you put the cheaper oil in. That's exactly what makes them dangerous. So if you want to save your engine, and that's the title of this video, here's the honest order. Correct oil to the exact specification in the handbook, changed on time. That's first, and it isn't close. Then the rest of the servicing, on schedule, not when it's convenient. Then investigating warning lights while they're still small. Then a long way down, fuel choice, which matters properly if your handbook asks for the high grade, or if your car sits still for months at a time, and matters a lot less than the internet thinks for everybody else. Quick run back. 6. The independent forecourt. Not the problem you think. Judge it on how busy it is and don't fill up while the tanker's still there. 5. Texaco. Premium unleaded is just ordinary petrol. Learn that word and you'll never be caught by it. 4. BP Ultimate. Good fuel wasted as an occasional treat. Always or never. 3. Tesco Momentum. Proper high octane, often cheaper, unfairly dismissed. Check your local one stocks it. 2. Esso Supreme Plus. The E5 matters more than the 99 if your car is old or sits still. That's the genuine engine saver here. 1. Shell V-Power. If your handbook asks for the high grade, this isn't a treat, it's the correct consumable, and it may well be costing you less per mile than the cheap stuff. Right, that's me. Tell me in the comments what you drive and which pump you use, and whether you've ever actually measured a difference over several tanks rather than just feeling one, because those replies are worth more to the next person watching than anything I've said today. Look after yourselves and check your oil spec before you worry about your petrol.